Chapter 71 Negotiation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After having a deep chat with the Baulon siblings, the sky gradually turned to dusk. Rhaegar gained a lot of useful information. For example, the land beneath your feet is not a continent, but the Crabclaw Peninsula. The Crabclaw Peninsula is adjacent to Dragonstone Island and Chowtu Island. It is a sparsely populated and wild land. As far as Rhaegar knew, the Crabclaw Peninsula was full of swamps and pine forests, and its resources were very scarce. There were only a handful of local nobles. This also means that it is basically impossible to get in touch with the nobles. A bonfire was lit in the cave, and 3 children, 1 old, 2 small, and 3 were sitting around. Tormund looked excited and asked repeatedly, "Your dragon is hunting outside. Is it really big?" "Of course, gluttons are so big that I'm like a flea on the dragon's back." Rhaegar gnawed on a wild fruit and chatted, "When you go out, your identity is given by your mouth." What Rhaegar said was what the other party would think. Although he didn't know where the glutton had gone, it didn't matter. As long as there was a real dragon nearby, no one would touch a hair on Rhaegar's head. "Your dragon is injured. There is a large bloodstain in the valley. I originally thought it was some kind of giant beast, but now it seems that it is undoubtedly your dragon." Baulon teased the bonfire and poured cold water on it at the right time. Lei Jia said without changing his expression, "We encountered other dragon attacks on the narrow sea, otherwise I would not be here alone." "There are other dragons?" Tormund's eyes widened. "Dragonstone is full of dragons. My ancestors relied on dragons to conquer the continent of Westeros." Rhaegar opened his mouth. "Nonsense, only 3 dragons appeared in the Conqueror War." Baulon retorted. "Are you familiar with history?" Rhaegar asked curiously. "Humph, I have also read books, and I am not a fool who just listens to your deception." Baulon snorted coldly. Rhaegar smiled without explaining, "It's good to have read the book. If you have read the book, you should know the importance of a prince, and he will be safer." At this moment, a loud eagle cry sounded outside the valley. Sapphire and Tormund raised their heads at the same time, stood up and walked out. "Is your tribe coming?" Rhaegar followed, feeling insecure. He tried calling out to Glutton via telepathy, but there was no response. Gluttony was seriously injured, and he guessed that he had flown somewhere to recuperate. During its return, whether it is good or bad depends entirely on Rhaegar's own efforts. "Get out of the cave." Rhaegar followed the Baulon siblings and saw a large group of people rushing in at the entrance of the valley. Each one is tall and thick, wearing leather jackets and armor, full of primitive wild style. The leader was a tall, middle-aged man. He has a thick brown beard braided and a pair of eyes as sharp as an eagle. As if aware of Rhaegar's gaze, the strong man turned his head and locked his position with one glance. Rhaegar's expression changed slightly and he tried to remain calm. This group of people is not easy to mess with at first glance. "They have really fallen into a den of savages," Baulon advised from the side. "Don't be afraid, Uncle Falcon is a very principled leader and will not harm young children." The entire Peregrine Falcon tribe entered the valley, and the scene suddenly became noisy. The savage leader named Falcon is quite capable. Arrange people to light fires and set up camp, and the planning is in order. Sapphire brought Rhaegar to Falcon's bonfire. At this time, the Falcon was skinning a hare, and his movements were very deft. After gutting the hare, putting it on a stick and grilling it, he slowly said, "Is he the noble child you picked up?" Baulon glanced at Rhaegar and said, "Seriously, he is the king's child, a true dragon." "A prince?" Falcon immediately raised his head, surprised. "It is true that he is a savage, but the prince's status is indeed too high." Looking at the savage leader in front of him who was looking at him, Rhaegar took a breath and knew what he should say. He looked directly at the other person and said seriously, Rhaegar Targaryen, I was born in the Red Keep in King's Landing. I wonder if this leader has a specific impression of this place. How could I know about a place thousands of miles away?" Falcon said lightly. "I traveled across the continent riding a dragon, and encountered trouble along the way. If you are willing to help me, I will definitely pay you generous rewards." Rhaegar came up with substantial interest negotiations. Falcon chuckled, "I do believe that, you have me who is a king, and I can also provide you with mountains of gold and silver. So you agreed to help me?" Rhaegar's eyes lit up. "No." Falcon suppressed his smile and refused directly. Why, I can give you gold and iron tools, as long as you protect them for a while. Rhaegar did not expect that the wildling leader would refuse and add conditions. Falcon turned over the roasted rabbit on the bonfire and said disdainfully, the Peregrine tribe does not trust outsiders and will not help outsiders. This has always been the case. Lei Jia frowned and looked at Baolan aside. Baolan nodded, it's always been like this. Then what do you plan to do with me, or what are the conditions before you are willing to help me? Rhaegar asked bluntly. Join the Peregrine Falcon tribe and become a member of the tribe. I will provide you with unconditional protection. Falcon said extremely seriously. Rhaegar smiled, sitting on the ground, staring at the other person with his arms crossed. He asked, do you think a Targaryen prince would join the wildling tribe? There is no funnier joke than this. At this point, Rhaegar's remaining fear had long since disappeared. He could see that the other party didn't want to help him at all. He is the Dragon Master, and the bloodstains in the valley prove the real existence of the glutton. He didn't believe that the savage in front of him dared to touch him. Falcon was not angry because of his words. Instead, he smiled and said, you don't intend to get my help either. You. Rhaegar was speechless for a moment. This is true, he has a dragon, so he just needs to wait quietly for the glutton to find him, and then he can fly away with the dragon. What he really needed was to hold back these savages to prevent them from harming him. The falcon cut off a piece of flesh from the sizzling hair and handed it to Rhaegar. He said in a low voice, I saw a giant beast, but it was injured and flew to the swamp of despair. I tentatively believe in your identity and can provide you with protection. I will wait for your dragon to come back to you. Before that, you must promise not to let your dragon harm my tribe and leave as soon as possible. He is not a primitive savage with a mind full of vandalism and robbery. He has fought with the noble lords on the peninsula and is more knowledgeable than the average savage. The imp in front of me is the king's son. Except for the giant beast, no creature in the bloodstains and ravines of the valley could be so destructive. That shit at the mouth of the valley, 80% of it is a mark left by the dragon before it left. Used to drive away wild beasts. From the very beginning, this kid has been a very dangerous existence for number one. The wild dragon will return to the valley at any time. No matter how many conditions you negotiate with this brat at this time, it will all turn into shit when the dragon stands in front of him. He could kill this brat and run away overnight, but the tribe is in danger, and tradition prohibits touching children. In comparison, it is better to leave this brat and feed him well. When the dragon appears, let this brat ride the dragon and get out of here. If this kid has a conscience, he will naturally find a way to repay him. After hearing what Falcon meant, Rhaegar's view of the wildlings changed greatly. Sure enough, bachelors are a bunch of blind guys, and what they say is very inaccurate. This savage is very smart and not reckless at all. You are truly a wise leader. I promise to restrain my dragons and live in peace with you. Rhaegar took the roast from him and praised him. It's not easy to be the leader. I have to think about everyone's heads and bellies. Falcon shook his head, tore off 2 pieces of meat and handed them to Baolan and his sister. Chapter 72 Shadow Monster. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the negotiation was concluded, the vigilance in both parties' minds was greatly reduced. Rhaegar ate the food provided by the wildlings, drank the water provided by the wildlings, and watched the wildlings dance around the campfire. Siblings Falcon and Sapphire always share a campfire with him, chatting about each other's stories calmly. The falcon picked at the scraps from the hare's skeleton and asked, You look young. The king's youngest son. I am the king's eldest son, Rhaegar said with a smile. If I remember correctly, the tradition of noble bastards, the eldest son is the heir. Will you be the new king in the future? Falcon was surprised. No. In fact, the heir is my sister. Rhaegar replied calmly. Why? She has a dick like yours hidden under her skirt. A rough-looking savage who was watching the fun came up to make noises, causing the nearby savages to laugh. Rhaegar glanced sideways at the other person, his eyes fell on Falcon, and he remained silent. Falcon's face was slightly angry. He grabbed the rough man's calf and said in a deep voice, Xander, get out of here. Yes, Xander, get out of here. The savage named Xander shook his head and repeated these words with a very unconcerned attitude. it wasn't until an eagle with black spots on a white background landed on the branch above his head that he shuddered and reluctantly walked away. Watching him disappear into the crowd, Falcon turned his head and said in a voice with no hint of emotion or anger, "The tribe has been unstable recently, and many warriors are restless. My mouth smells bad. I wonder how it compares to the dragon dung at Taniguchi." Rhaegar smiled slightly. "I will teach him a lesson and warn others at the same time." Falcon paused in his movements, his voice a little irritable. He was not a threat to anger Rhaegar, it was the tribesmen who made him lose face in front of distinguished guests. The night is getting darker. After filling his stomach, Rhaegar returned to the cave where he woke up to rest. Falcon gave him some soft animal skins and arranged for the Baulon siblings to follow him. After laying out the animal skin blanket himself, Rhaegar called to the siblings sleeping against the wall and gave them the remaining animal skin. "Thank you." Tormund thanked softly. "Can I ask you some questions, such as what changes happened to the tribe?" Rhaegar took the opportunity to inquire about information. Tormund held the animal skin and looked at Sapphire blankly. Baulon nodded and turned around to spread the straw mat. Tormund said, "The tribe's original place was attacked by monsters, and several people died. Uncle Falcon had no choice but to take us to migrate." "Monster? Crocodile or python in the swamp?" Rhaegar became interested. "No, it's a monster hiding in the shadows. It moves like a python and pierces our bodies." Tormund told with fear. This monster brought him a deep psychological shadow. "I've never heard of similar shadow monsters circulating. Is this true?" Rhaegar looked at Baulon dubiously. Sapphire was similar in age to Rhaenyra, so what she said was more credible. Baulon looked ugly. "It's true. Even the old people in the tribe have never seen or heard of such monsters. They seem to appear out of thin air. Wow, looks like we're in trouble." Rhaegar frowned hesitantly. He was not sure if there were any shadow monsters on the Crab Claw Peninsula, but this tribe seems not as safe as imagined. After a brief exchange, the cave fell into silence. The three of them were lying in their own bunks, and they could still hear the screams of the wild men in the carnival outside the cave. After a while, Baulon couldn't help it first and asked, "Why is your sister the heir?" "There is no reason. She and I are both our father's children. It doesn't matter who is the heir." Rhaegar chatted boringly. "You are kidding yourself. Those nobles prefer a man in charge to lead them." Baulon questioned. "That's true, but my father chose her to be his heir. We are relatives, and I just want to help her. She will get married in the future, have her own husband, and give birth to her children, who will be her lifelong relatives." Baulon snorted coldly and said, "And you, a younger brother who is ahead of her in the pecking order, will only become an obstacle to her. Which lord are you the illegitimate daughter of? Does it sound familiar to the Targaryen family?" Rhaegar smiled and asked. "It's none of your business, he's just a bastard who can't control his pants." Baulon didn't like to mention her origins. "Then I don't need you to take care of my housework, miss." Rhaegar defeated the magic with magic. He called you miss." Tormund, who was huddled in the corner, chuckled silly. "What about you, young master?" Baulon stood up and kicked him, which made him stop laughing. After a few words, the cave fell into silence again. Midnight, the humid air evaporated water vapor, and large dark clouds rose into the sky, covering the crescent moon. Without the moonlight, the night becomes darker. In the valley, the savages were tired from the commotion and fell asleep on the ground in twos and threes. The piles of bonfires gradually became smaller and smaller, leaving only sporadic flames crackling. In a dim environment, a strange dark creature twisted its shape and emerged from the dark shadows of the trees. The dark creature blended well into the shadows, crawling like a snake, and came to the side of a sleeping savage. Slowly, get into the savage's nostrils, ears, mouth. The dark creature seemed to be able to split apart and invaded the savage's body pervasively. A soft stick-like object was thrust into his throat. The savage let out two chirps and woke up from his dream in discomfort. "As soon as I opened my eyes, then he saw a pitch-black twisted monster lying on his chest, branching out like vine-like tentacles." The savage's eyes widened for a moment, fear filled his heart, and he wanted to scream. "Well, Before he could scream, two tentacles from his nostrils pierced his brain and muddied his brain. Easily plunder a savage's life. The dark monster twisted its figure, pulled out its tentacles, and looked for its next prey. In the cave, Rhaegar was sleeping soundly. Ah! In vain, a shrill scream resounded through the valley, waking everyone up. Rhaegar opened his eyes drowsily and looked around at a loss. Sister Baelon also woke up. He picked up the weapon beside him and rushed out of the cave, warning, "It's dangerous outside, don't go out." Rhaegar was stunned for a moment, then quickly got up and followed. He had heard many horror stories. When encountering danger, the one who is alone is the most dangerous. He still understands this. After leaving the cave, the savages outside were in a panic. Some people add fuel to the bonfire, and some people light torches. The night was just a little brighter. Rhaegar stood close behind Baelon and stuck his head out to see the reason. There was a lot of noise outside. The savages were howling and screaming, and no useful information could be obtained. Waited for a while. The noisy scene just stopped. It was Falcon leading the savage warriors back from their inspection. They were carrying several bodies. They are all strong male savages. 3 orifices were bleeding, but there were no injuries on the surface of the body. One had an arrow in his chest, piercing his heart, and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. In front of everyone in the tribe, Falcon threw the 3 corpses that died in the same manner into the bonfire and burned the remains. The other one pulled out the arrow and looked at it gloomily. "We are being targeted by other tribes." Falcon clutched the arrow tightly and roared angrily. Thanks to Zengsunxen for the 500 points reward. Thanks to Fengyungxiag in Seinfeld for the 100-point reward. Chapter 73 Commitment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Falcon opened his mouth, the savages immediately started shouting and shouting for revenge. Rhaegar pulled Tormund's arm and asked in a low voice, "What happened to the 3 burned corpses?" Only one of the slain bodies had an arrow wound. The other 3 bodies died under strange circumstances. It was hard not to catch Rhaegar's attention. Tormund turned around and lowered his voice in fear. "That's the person who was killed by the shadow monster. That monster is still following the tribe." As he spoke, his body was shaking and his face became even paler. Facing the tribe members, Falcon raised his hands and said loudly, "Quiet, the enemy is hiding nearby, prepare your weapons immediately." The savage who was shot was a night watchman. A savage just defecated in the middle of the night and found his body in the grass, so he let out a scream to inform the tribe. The other 3 corpses were discovered after most people woke up. 4 tribesmen died in one night. The Peregrine Falcon tribe seemed to be cast under a shadow, and the atmosphere was gloomy and depressing. Falcon led the strong savages to pick up weapons, light torches, and detachment went out of the valley. The wildlings who were keeping watch at night were killed, which meant that enemies were lurking around. An attack will be launched at any time. Rhaegar watched this scene and frowned secretly. This tribe is targeted by some unknown monster. Now the migration route has been discovered by other tribes. If you attack indiscriminately, you will only be ambushed by the enemy, and you will probably be wiped out overnight. Rhaegar took a step forward and wanted to give a warning. Baelon grabbed his back collar and scolded, "Don't be ridiculous, impulsive savages don't have any brains. Tonight will be dangerous." Rhaegar suggested. "I know, and so does Uncle Falcon, but the way of survival for savages is to constantly fight and annex." Sapphire held the bow on his back, holding Rhaegar with one hand and Tormund with the other. "Let's follow the female savage who has children. Ordinary tribes will not kill women and children." All the savages who could fight followed the falcon out of the valley. Rhaegar was placed among the old, weak and sick. In addition to pregnant women, there are savage children who look like wild monkeys. Rhaegar asked strangely, "It seems that there are not many men in your tribe, and there are also too many children." "The annexed tribe will have all its men and elders killed, its women raped, and its children abandoned." Baelon said, "Many of these children are abandoned children picked up by Uncle Falcon. He said the child would soon grow up and become a brave warrior. Falcon is really a different kind of wild man." Rhaegar shook his head and laughed. As a savage who survives on safari, where can he find the food to raise his children? It is too difficult to expect a little savage to grow up. Early in the morning, flames rose outside the valley, and along with the shrill screams, another group of crazy howls sounded. Falcon ran back to the valley in embarrassment. Covered in blood, there were only a dozen or so figures behind him, each of them badly injured and with frightened and angry expressions on their faces. Howls followed them. The fire surged into the open valley. Run! The people from the White Pine tribe are coming, everyone, run away. Falcon swung his axe to knock down the bone arrows he was following, and shouted to the tribesmen to run. Let's go quickly. Without saying a word, Rhaegar ran toward the narrow exit on the other side of the valley. When he turned around, the others were running faster than him. He ran away screaming in panic. Rhaegar was left behind, his little arms and legs unable to catch up with the adults. With an anxious heart, try to contact the glutton. However, there was still no response. Don't just stand there, let's go. Falcon ran from behind, grabbed Rhaegar's clothes, put it on his shoulders, and ran away with all his strength. Rhaegar took a moment to look back. The invading savage tribe rushed into the valley, half of them searching for the supplies left by the peregrine falcon tribe. The remaining men continued the pursuit. The dozen or so people brought back by Falcon were unable to form effective resistance in front of them. Either they were chased and hacked to death, or they were killed by bone arrows. People born in Falcon are tall and strong, and their leather boots make wind when they run. Throwing the chasing savages far away made Rhaegar feel more at ease. He really didn't want to get involved in a fight between two savage tribes and have the coward be killed. At the break of dawn, the remnants of the peregrine falcon tribe ran westward through large pine forests. Many people got separated. The man was killed on the spot, and the woman was pushed to the ground and raped. The children fled in all directions, some were killed casually, and some hid in the dense forest. Falcon carried Rhaegar and fled, leaving only a few wildling guards following him. When I couldn't run anymore, I hid on a hillside and took a short rest. Falcon, the tribe is gone. The savage named Sandor had a sad face and questioned the leader. It can be rebuilt if it is gone. As long as we are still alive, we will fight back one day. Falcon gave a low shout and put down Rhaegar, who was bumping along the way. The tribe is almost dead. What are you doing with this little brat? Another wildling pointed at the pale Rhaegar. Rhaegar glanced at him, his whole body ached so much, and he hid behind the falcon. He has a dragon and is the king's son. He is more noble than anyone you have ever seen in the castle. He can bring wealth to the tribe. Falcon opened his hands and explained in a low voice. You are lying. If he really had a dragon, he would have burned us all down long ago. That's right, maybe he is the one who attracted the White Pine tribe, and he is a scourge. It doesn't matter whether they are noble or not, we can't count on them. They are just lies. Seemingly finding a punching bag, the wildlings glared at Rhaegar. Someone was holding a weapon and staring at him maliciously. Rhaegar sounded the alarm in his heart and said, My dragon is on the way back. I will control the dragon to avenge the peregrine tribe and bring you unexpected gold. He knew that this tribe was unreliable. He actually didn't even last one night before he was broken up. After hearing his words, the noisy accusations of the savages subsided, and they all focused on Falcon, waiting for what he means. Falcon took a deep breath, showed the magnanimity of a leader, and said solemnly, He said he has a dragon, so let's wait for a day, and we will know the truth. If he has a dragon, my head will be used as a wine flask for you. Xander sneered repeatedly, turned and left. Several other savages looked at each other and wanted to follow him, but due to Falcon's status, they sat down on the spot in despair. Falcon did not stop Sandor and said, Rest where you are and set off at dawn. After saying that, Falcon grabbed Rhaegar's clothes, picked them up, and walked to the top of the hillside. He looked at the pine forest where he came from, observing whether there were any pursuing savages. Rhaegar squatted aside and said feebly, I really have a dragon. I know. Your tribe is broken up, what are you going to do? Wait. What are you waiting for? Rhaegar asked strangely. Falcon turned his head, looked directly at him, and said indifferently, When your dragon finds you, burn the White Pine tribe with fire. Will you believe me? Rhaegar didn't expect the wildling leader to trust him so much. Do not believe, Falcon said coldly, but my tribe was attacked, the men were killed, and the women and children were captured. I need your dragon to regain everything I lost. Rhaegar released and promised, Don't worry, as long as my dragon finds me, I will definitely avenge your tribe. I have kept my promise, and you must remember what I said. Halfway through Hayabusa's words, a hidden arrow shot from the corner and hit his right eye socket with a whooshing sound. In front of Rhaegar, the bone arrow drilled out from the back of the falcon's head and penetrated his skull. Chapter 74, Enmity Never Lasts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What does it feel like to witness death? If Rhaegar were to answer, he would say, I don't know. Blood spurted from Falcon's head, dyeing half of his silver hair red. Rhaegar didn't feel any discomfort, or fear, or trembling. After wiping the blood splattered on his face, Rhaegar quietly looked at Falcon's body with its mouth still open. He blinked and looked towards the direction where the bone arrow came from. There was a large pine tree with thick needles. Sandor, who had run away, stood under the shade of a tree, still holding his bow and shooting arrows. Died? After a while, Rhaegar murmured in a low voice and kicked the falcon's body. This savage leader is pretty good, more rational and smarter than the average savage. Remember to protect him on the way to escape. Just die. Everyone, stand up. That guy Falcon is dead. We have to find another way out. After shooting the leader, Xander quickly ran up the hillside and gave orders to the few savages who had not yet been discovered. After being reminded by him, he saw the falcon lying in a pool of blood in the distance, except for a tall savage who was aggrieved by Falcon and planned to kill Xander for revenge. The other savages didn't respond, staring at Xander with careful eyes. Xander pointed his bow at the tall savage and shot out a bone arrow with a whoosh, killing the opponent instantly. Then, he stood arrogantly in front of people, shouted, The Peregrine Falcon tribe is gone. Do you want to wander aimlessly in the pine forest? Follow me, let's go to the White Pine tribe and join a stronger, curse-free tribe. Xander persuaded others to join him in joining the enemy. Savages are not fools. Someone immediately stood up and questioned, We are the remnants of the Peregrine tribe, why should we take in our enemies? Xander pointed at Rhaegar, who was stunned on the spot, and spoke loudly, His father is a king, and he has gold, silver and jewelry. If we offer him to the White Pine tribe, he will definitely be accepted. What he said makes sense. Several savages were shaken. In the end, Xander personally tied up Rhaegar and carried him on his shoulders. Let's go find the White Pine tribe and check if there are any stray people. Xander has become the leader of several savages. Rhaegar didn't resist at all and let him tie him up without saying a word. A pair of big violet eyes were round and stared at Xander without blinking. Little bastard, send you out so that we can have a way to survive. Xander noticed his gaze and said with a sinister smile. It makes sense. I am indeed valuable. Rhaegar admitted with approval. Then you'd better be more honest, lest I break your arms and legs. Don't worry, I will be honest. Dusk, several savages found many stray companions, all men, women and children, old and young, are integrated into the team, heading cautiously to the temporary base of the Baisong tribe. It's still that valley. As soon as they reached the outskirts of the valley, they were spotted by patrolling savages, who called for help and captured the group. Enter the valley again. The valley was filled with the smell of blood, and there were piles of corpses everywhere, most of them being massacred. People of the Peregrine Falcon tribe, Rhaegar and Xander were brought before the leader of the White Pine tribe. At this time, Rhaegar noticed that the White Pine tribe was not the only one besieging the Peregrine tribe. Surrounding a campfire with the leader of the Baisong tribe were 4 tall and thick savage leaders, from different tribes. Seeing Xander kneeling down to plead, the leader of the White Pine tribe looked down upon him. He didn't even bother to ask, and had all his hands and feet broken. Pointing at Rhaegar, who was thrown at the front, he said impatiently, This little brat is locked up with the women and children, while the others are kept to sacrifice to the dead. Yes, Xander and his gang didn't even have a chance to explain. Before their hands and feet were broken and dragged away. While screaming, he still hoped to sacrifice Rhaegar to save his life, but these leaders didn't believe it at all and didn't even bother to listen. They are just a group of savages in the ravines. Who has ever seen what the king looks like? You say yes. On the contrary, a cruel-faced leader took a fancy to Rhaegar's bracelet and snatched it without any explanation. Rhaegar opened his mouth, but before he could speak, he was pushed to the ground. Take it, you're a useless little brat, keep it for now. Rhaegar fell hard and struggled to get up. He didn't speak, didn't scream, and remained silent. that's all. Rhaegar was untied and thrown into a heap of captives enclosed by a fence. In this group of savages composed of women and children, Rhaegar caught sight of the Sapphire siblings. At this time, Sapphire was covered in mud and dung, dragging Tormund to huddle in the corner. Seeing an acquaintance, Rhaegar rubbed his painful stomach and walked over. "It's you. If you're not with Uncle Falcon, why are you here?" The vigilant Balon quickly discovered him. Rhaegar looked embarrassed and said, "Falcon is a good person, but his life is a bit short. Uncle Falcon is dead." Balon couldn't believe it. "I was assassinated by a traitor on the way to escape." Rhaegar was a little regretful. "It's over. Uncle Falcon is so powerful that he died, and we will suffer too." Balon lowered his head in despair. "There's no telling if things will turn around." Rhaegar persuaded and then asked, "This group of savages wants to sacrifice the traitors who surrendered to the enemy to the souls of the dead. Is this your savage tradition? I heard from my captors before that the surrounding tribes were attacked by monsters. They thought it was the undead that were causing trouble, so they captured people from other tribes to sacrifice." Tormund, who was squatting on the ground, said in fear. Rhaegar nodded and asked no more questions. He silently walked to another corner and squatted down. He had to think hard about how to save himself. The Peregrine Falcon tribe failed to live up to expectations. The few tribes gathered in the valley don't look very smart either. "Hey, just squat down, that's safe for now." Rhaegar sighed deeply and closed his eyes. Night is coming. The victorious savage tribe held a carnival and lit bonfires everywhere to vent their emotions after the fight. It was quiet until midnight. Men sleep with women in their arms, and women sleep with children in their arms. Everyone slept like dead pigs. A strong wind blew over the valley, blowing away the stench of the savage gathering place. Rhaegar opened his eyes, silently looking at the dim night sky. The time has come. With a whisper, Rhaegar got up from the ground, glanced at the women and children who couldn't sleep due to fear, and walked to the edge of the fence alone. There were several savages guarding the fence. It was getting too late, and the savages on guard were sleepy, lazy and slippery. Rhaegar has a thin body and wears a black dragon riding suit, which hides him well in the night. He quietly got out of the rotten fence and walked out quietly. There are savages patrolling the valley, in teams of 3 or 2. Rhaegar avoided their sight and came to a cliff. Here, Sandor and his group were imprisoned. Rhaegar looked at them. All of them were covered with bruises. Their hands and feet were cut off, their tongues were pulled out, and they were tied to the ground one by one. Rhaegar took a medium-sized iron axe from a passing campfire. He walked to Xander, who lost too much blood and fell into a coma. He raised the axe and aimed it at Xander's head. After thinking about it, I put it down. Then, aimed at Xander's neck. After thinking about it, I put it down again. Rhaegar kicked Xander's head and whispered, "Hey! Wake up!" The kicks became harder and harder, and Xander was forced to wake up. Opening his eyes in fear, Xander was trembling all over and mumbling incoherently. "Look at me, Xander!" Rhaegar roused him from his fear. Xander raised his head in panic and saw Rhaegar standing alone. "It's you!" Poof! Before he finished speaking, Rhaegar raised his axe and swung it down suddenly, hitting him on the neck. The artery was severed and blood spurted out like a fountain, covering half of Rhaegar's body. Rhaegar glanced down and said silently, "You and Hayabusa are half the same, so this suit is a waste." After that, continue to turn the axe. The adventure begins. Thanks to 24 Bridge Mingwei for the 100-point reward. Chapter 75 The Dragon Returns. You are listening at novelfull.audio. An axe connected to an axe. Rhaegar seemed tireless, until blood flowed all over the ground and a big head rolled off. Taking a life with his own hands, Rhaegar felt an indescribable feeling, all in all very bad. This axe is really heavy, but it's very handy. After whispering something, Rhaegar threw away the axe and picked up the filthy head. This was just the appetizer for the night. He had a lot to do. This time, he did not hide from the sight of the patrolling savages, walked to the center of the camp openly. A group of patrolling savages immediately spotted him and surrounded him with weapons in hand. "Stop, little boy!" With a scolding, several savages surrounded Rhaegar with a fierce look in their eyes. The kid who sneaked out would be beaten to death and no one would take care of him. Rhaegar looked at them quietly and said calmly, "Idiots, you should be polite to a Targaryen." "Ha, damn little bastard," let's see if I don't kill you. A skinny savage with an ugly face laughed loudly and stepped forward carrying a stone spear. Rhaegar did not dodge, and pointed at the top of his head. Look here. Several savages didn't know why and subconsciously raised their heads. Buzz. In the pitch-black night, a pair of huge green lights like copper bells bloomed, like two clusters of faint will-o-wisps. The savages stopped and froze in place. Then, the green light shook slightly, the curtain-like night sky seemed to tremble. Only then did they realize that the darkness above them was not night, instead, it was a huge thing as black as coal. At this moment, the giant beast was looking down at all the living creatures in the valley. Thump thump thump. The moment they saw the giant beast clearly, the savages' pupils dilated and their whole bodies trembled. They fell to their knees one after another, dropped their weapons and screamed. Eat him. Rhaegar passed by the wizened wild man and softly pronounced his punishment. Hiss. The glutton lowered his head and roared, and the smelly wind blew him backwards. Before it could land, the giant dragon stretched out its flexible tongue and rolled it into its mouth, chewing and swallowing accompanied by the crunching sound of broken bones. Its back, Rhaegar's dragon, the largest wild dragon king on Dragonstone, returned to the master again. When Rhaegar was captured during the day, the glutton felt that the dragon driver was in danger and returned on his own initiative. Rhaegar also made contact with Glutton, silently waiting for the dragon's return. All the forbearance during the day was for revenge at this moment. He is the true dragon and he conquered the dragon. Now, Rhaegar will bring his dragon and burn the disrespectful with dragon's fire. Under the dark night, the glutton's dark body lay down for the young prince to climb onto the dragon's back. After 2 days and 1 night of separation, one person and one dragon meet again. Rhaegar looked down at the savages below, his face expressionless and his eyes cold. The glutton's huge feet walked past them, and Rhaegar's indifferent voice sounded. Go and call your leaders. I'll wait for them here. Rhaegar sat high on the dragon's back and gave orders to the remaining patrolling savages without looking back. Strange monster. A group of poor guys were frightened by the sight of their companions being devoured. Hearing Rhaegar's voice sounded like a demon whispering, screaming. They got up from the ground and fled in all directions. Rhaegar didn't stop him. By their shouts the whole camp was awakened and converged towards the center. Wow. Not long after, a group of disheveled savages swarmed over with weapons. When he saw Rhaegar and his gluttons, he immediately stopped and did not dare to take a step beyond the thunder pool. What a giant beast this is. The coward's knees weakened and he did not even think of taking up arms to resist. As the leader of the savage tribe, a few tall and thick guys whom I had seen during the day stood at the front of the savages. He stood at the dragon's feet like an ant, looking up at Rhaegar in fear. Rhaegar glanced over them one by one, never saying a word. Finally, his eyes rested on the savage leader who pushed him. Is it you? Rhaegar tilted his head, ignoring the wildlings who were almost scared away by his words, and pointed at one of them. That was a savage with a sinister face. Rhaegar remembered him because the other party took away his bracelet. What? The savage leader he was pointing at spoke awkwardly and shrank back humbly. You took my things and gave them back to me. Rhaegar waved and said calmly. When the other party heard this, he reacted, grabbed a female savage behind him, and took out a silver-gray bracelet from his leather pocket. He knelt down on the ground with a pop and offered his hands respectfully. Your stuff. Rhaegar did not move. Instead, he threw Sandor's head at his feet and said softly, Here is this for you. Pick it clean and use it as a flagon. Yes. The savage leader quickly agreed, staring blankly at the head on the ground, not daring to move. Rhaegar patted the glutton on the back and said, Help me, man. Hiss. The glutton roared, intimidating a group of savages to kneel down, but it didn't breathe dragon flames. The slender tail poked out from behind, rolled up the savage leader, and brought him to Rhaegar. Rhaegar took the bracelet and waved his hand casually. The glutton flicked his tail, and the savage leader fell to the ground with a plop. He rolled far away and passed out. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, it's up to you whether you live or not. Rhaegar glanced at him, very indifferently. When Rhaegar looked down at the wildlings below again, Glutton sensed what he meant. Hiss. It raised its head high, roared and sprayed out a stream of dragon flames, illuminating half of the valley and causing the surrounding temperature to rise. Blah blah blah. With this move, the psychological defense of the savages disappeared instantly. They all knelt on the ground, dropped their weapons, and shouted in fear and reverence to the gods and fire gods. Rhaegar ignored it and said in a cold voice, "Who is the leader of the White Pine tribe? Come forward." His voice was not loud, but it was heard above the din of shouts. The savages whispered for a while, and driven by fear, they pushed the leader of the White Pine tribe out of the way. "This is a strong young savage with a strong face." Rhaegar's expression remained unchanged as he asked, "There are many savage tribes attacking the Peregrine tribe. Who planned it?" "It's me. We gathered together because of the curse of the evil spirit." The leader of the White Pine tribe gritted his teeth and suppressed his fear as he answered. "Good, I like your honesty." Rhaegar praised him appreciatively, caressed the glutton's back, and said lightly, "Dragon flame," that the wildlings could not understand High Valyrian and looked at Rhaegar blankly. The next moment, green dragon flames arrived in an instant. Hiss! The glutton roared, and the dragon flames instantly engulfed the leader of the White Pine tribe. A short moment, the flesh and blood body was turned into flying ashes under the dragon flames, burned completely. Rhaegar lowered his head and did not look at this scene. Killing someone was easy, but he didn't like the feeling, but he promised Falcon that he would avenge his tribe. Targaryen keeps his word. Run! Run quickly, this kid is the incarnation of the devil. He is riding a monster to kill us all. Dragon flames inspired the ferocity of some people. They didn't have the guts to attack Rhaegar and the glutton, so they picked up their weapons and ran away. Rhaegar watched this scene with no emotion in his eyes, and lightly opened his lips. Dragon flame. Hiss! The glutton stretched its wings and soared into the air, its huge figure shrouding the sky over the fleeing savages. Dragon flames brew in the throat, the teasing tongue slowly sprayed over the heads of the escaping savages. Amidst the frightened screams, within a moment, none of the escapees survived. The gluttons were bored and hovered over the valley, scorning these smelly little bugs. At this moment, the savage's weakness was infinitely magnified, witnessing the crushing power of the dragon. The survivors could only kneel on the ground and beg for mercy. Rhaegar was riding on the back of a dragon, soaring in the night sky, overlooking the hustle and bustle below. To be honest, he could not understand what these savages were saying. The savages are a loose group. Although they speak common language, their accents vary greatly. What he heard in his ears was just the strange cry of ula ula. Rhaegar enjoyed the night breeze blowing on his face, and the inner peace gave him an incomparable sense of security. The glutton hovered over the valley twice, spitting dragon flames wantonly to vent the emotions of the driver. After a while, Rhaegar came to his senses. Looking sideways at the large group of savages kneeling down below, he ordered, "Bring the people from the Peregrine tribe safely, and the White Pine tribe will detain them all." "Yes, Lord Spirit, we are willing to serve you." At this moment, no matter you are the savage leader or a savage who only knows how to act recklessly, you all kneel down and worship. Under the wings of the dragon, all living beings are equal. Rhaegar pointed to the charred corpses on the ground and said displeasedly, "Collect the corpses and burn them together later." Dragon is back. I changed it a little bit. I don't know if it has any effect. Update tomorrow. 3 updates at 0 o'clock in the morning. Chapter 76 The Unkillable Shadow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rhaegar's childish voice was like the highest decree, and no one dared to ignore it. Some brave savages got up from the ground and stared at the giant dragon in the sky with fear. The cat bent down to collect the charred corpses that had not been burned cleanly. Rhaegar was in a good mood at the moment and was not idle. Pointing out several other savage leaders, he said lazily, "Introduce yourself and why you are gathered here." He didn't care what the savages were called, but he took the curse spoken by the savages very seriously. The Peregrine Falcon tribe was killed by a shadow monster, and he had seen the corpses. These savage tribes were probably attacked by the same kind of monsters and were forced to huddle together for warmth. He wanted to ask questions about the curse. "Lord God, your loyal servants are named Grand, Moriyama, and Trangel." The savage leader who was pointed out trembled all over and confessed honestly like a lamb. A total of 5 tribes of savages gathered in the valley, except for the leader of the Bisong tribe who was buried in the dragon flames and the savage leader who was blown away. The other 3 are all here. Rhaegar signaled the glutton to land, and the huge dragon body raised a puff of smoke. The savages were so blown away that they couldn't even open their eyes. Rhaegar called out a wildling leader. For questioning, ask what the so-called curse is, the bearded savage named Trangle said in fear. The curse comes from the shadow. It steals the lives of free people silently. It cannot be killed or captured. We can only use human sacrifices. Sure enough, it was a shadow monster. Rhaegar nodded secretly and asked, how many curses are there? Do each of your tribes have them? There is only one curse. It wanders in the dark nights of swamps and pine forests, looking for suitable prey. Trangle answered. Have you seen with your own eyes the sacrificed person killed by the shadow? Rhaegar frowned. Yes, many people have seen the curse walking out of the shadows and killing the living. It seems to be some kind of weird monster. Rhaegar thought silently and realized the seriousness of the problem. A murderous monster that shuttles in the shadows is a terrifying existence anywhere. Now it only exists on the Crabclaw Peninsula. Who knows if it will spread to the mainland? With a dragon by his side, Rhaegar couldn't let things go, stayed for a while. Ski returned with the captives of the Peregrine tribe. The savages belonging to the White Pine tribe were also escorted out of the crowd and knelt down on the other side. Rhaegar pondered for a moment and said coldly, bring those traitors up and lure out the shadow monsters. He wanted to weigh the monster. Are you afraid of dragon flames? The savages are a group of savages with weak human nature. They immediately go to escort the traitors after receiving the order, including Xander who lost his head. Rhaegar sat on the dragon's back and watched. The savages below tied the traitor to a tree, extinguished the surrounding bonfires, leaving only a shadow. All that's left is to wait quietly. According to these savage leaders, shadow monsters visit almost every night, taking lives from the tribe. This also made people panic and filled the tribe with uneasiness. In the end, they chose to form an alliance. 5 small tribes formed one big tribe. They raided surrounding tribes, plundered supplies, and plundered populations. Although they didn't say it, Rhaegar knew, they are using captives to perform so-called sacrifices to prevent the savages in the alliance from being killed by the curse. Time passes minute by minute. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, a large number of savages kneeling on the ground shook their heads. Worried about their next life and death, Rhaegar lay on the glutton's back, his nervousness relaxed and listless. Ah! The curse is coming. Suddenly, a terrifying scream sounded, attracting everyone's attention. Rhaegar suddenly raised his head and looked towards the direction where the sound came from, not a shade to bind captives, but among the savages of the White Pine tribe alone. A female wildling screamed in terror, and the crowd instantly dispersed from the center, revealing the location where the curse occurred. Rhaegar stood up and looked around. I saw a male savage lying on the ground, with twisting black tentacles emerging from the shadows beneath him, entwining themselves tightly. Next to it, there was a corpse bleeding from all the orifices. Get out of my way! Rhaegar drove away the surrounding savages, drove the glutton forward, and said, Dragon flame. The glutton stared at the shadow with disgust and hesitated. After hearing the driver's command, he shook his body in resistance and sprayed dragon flames at the shadow from a distance. Boom! The dragon flames fell, and the green fire burned brightly, dispersing the large shadows. The dragon flame ceased, leaving only a piece of scorched earth and burning deep holes. The shadow monster is nowhere to be seen. Not burned to death. Rhaegar looked around doubtfully. Ah! Another scream sounded, coming from the direction of the savages of the Peregrine Falcon tribe. Rhaegar turned around. Tentacles extending from the shadow rose from the ground and entangled several wild women and their children. Without waiting for Rhaegar to give orders from dragon flame, his tentacles penetrated into their ears, noses and mouths, plundering their lives. Rhaegar stared at the shadow monster in surprise. I was surprised to find that every time a life was killed, the shadow on the ground would grow larger and the tentacles would become thicker and longer. Dragon flame. Without any time to think about it, Rhaegar hurriedly ordered the glutton to breathe out dragon flames. This time, the shadow monster didn't have time to kill the wildling on its tentacles. The moment he retracted into the shadow, he was hit by dragon flames. The large shadow on the ground seemed to have been hit hard, twisting and shaking wildly. He tried to get closer to Rhaegar, but was dispersed by the glutton's dragon flames. Finally, it let out a sharp roar and disappeared into the nearby shadows. What is this? But even the dragon flames could withstand it. Rhaegar's eyes widened. Glutton's dragon flames are extraordinary. more powerful than most adult dragons and capable of melting stone. This monster resisted the dragon flames and was able to hide in the shadows and escape. So weird, Rhaegar was shocked by the strangeness of the shadow monster. This is the most bizarre unknown creature he has ever seen. But the scene of dragon flames repelling the shadow monster greatly shocked the savages. The ignorant savages fell to their knees one after another, shouting for God to save the world. Rhaegar was upset by the noise, and signaled the gluttons to roar to suppress their shouts, and said sternly, "I am not a god, I am a Targaryen, shut up." In the crowd, Sapphire pulled Tormund and looked at Rhaegar with bright eyes. His eyes were full of admiration and shock, after hearing his denial of the identity of the god. He immediately echoed, "You can control a giant dragon, you are the Dragon King." As she shouted, the wild people followed one after another, shouting for the Dragon King. "Dragon King, Dragon King." Rhaegar glanced at Sapphire, who started first, and raised his eyebrows. "He is a descendant of the Dragon King, not the Dragon King, but Dragon King is better than the title of Lord God." Rhaegar looked down at the submissive and fearful wild men, thoughts flashing in his eyes. He promised to avenge Falcon's tribe. One savage leader was obviously not enough. Previously he was wondering whether to burn them all in one fire. Now, he has a new idea. The shadow monster is an anomaly. The person who wanted to attack Rhaegar just now might have been targeting him. Rhaegar would not tolerate threats. We cannot leave such a monster that devours life and growth in the world. If you want to kill the shadow monster, this group of savages must work hard. After a brief thought, Rhaegar said loudly, "The curse has taken root on the Crabclaw Peninsula, plundering your lives, forcing you to keep moving, and you cannot live a peaceful life. I am the king's eldest son, a Targaryen prince. I control the most ferocious wild dragon king in the world, and possess the dragon fire that burns everything. Surrender to me and I will protect you from the curse. Serve me and I will harness the dragon to drive away the curse and uproot the fear." New year, new atmosphere, the first day of the new year. Here's the latest update. I wish you all happiness and prosperity in the new year. Special reminder, the author of the previous chapter thinks it is not perfect and has made slight changes. Interested friends can refresh and read it again. Thanks to Fong Ziyang for the 1000 points reward. Thanks for the reward of 100 points for hitting people on time. Thanks to Fu Guangyibei for the 100 reading points. Chapter 77 Capture of the Peninsula. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rhaegar's voice was still childish, and his thin body was not intimidating, but under his crotch was a giant dragon as huge as a mountain. All the savages could only look up to him. At the sound of his voice, the savages all surrendered and fell before the glutton's towering body. The situation was excellent. Lei Jia continued, "Since you have surrendered to me, you must strictly fulfill my orders. Otherwise the dragon flame will not escape. Please issue your decree." The leading savage leaders had fanatical faces, showing no signs of resistance or hatred from being conquered. Savages are people too. People know how to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. The curse kills them, but the dragon flame can save their lives. In front of the terrifying dragon, the unorganized and undisciplined savages rushed to be loyal and willing to follow the more powerful leader. Receiving the admiration of the savages, Rhaegar raised his brows slightly and felt a different kind of feeling in his heart. After thinking for a while, he issued the first order. The shadow monster will attack every savage tribe. Before it grows up, you will integrate all the savage tribes under my leadership and conquer the peninsula. This was a temporary solution he came up with. Gather all the savages, and the shadow monsters will only be exposed to Rhaegar's field of vision if they attack the savages again. There will always be times when you are killed by dragon flames. Oh ho ho. Upon hearing that they wanted to conquer the peninsula and defeat all the savage tribes, these savages went crazy. I kept cheering and couldn't wait to set off all night. For this group of savages who fight all year round, there is nothing better than aggression and lovemaking. The next day, Rhaegar summoned several wildling leaders and told them to take care of their tribes. The White Pine tribe, which lost its leader, elected a new leader. They are collectively called Crab Claws. It means becoming Rhaegar's minions and leading their respective tribes. The valley is a good choice as a base. Rhaegar ordered the women and children to stay in the valley and arranged for 100 wildling warriors to garrison them. There are more than 3,000 people from the 5 savage tribes, old, weak, women and children. Get rid of half of the savages who can't fight. There are only more than 1,000 people who can actually take up arms and fight. For Rhaegar, that was enough. The purpose of these 1,000 men was to scatter among the swamps and pine forests in search of the savage tribes on the peninsula. Every time he found a tribe of wildlings, Rhaegar would drive the glutton to circle above their heads twice. Needless to say, these savages knelt down and surrendered. In just 5 days, Rhaegar flew over the eastern part of the Crab Claw Peninsula on his dragon, overwhelm more than a dozen small tribes and recruit tens of thousands of savages. The edge of a fetid swamp, Rhaegar sat in a temporary animal skin tent and asked, "How many people have been integrated today?" Back to the prince, there are more than 2,000 people in total, and there are only more than 800 people who can fight. Balon, who had changed into linen clothes, stood in front of him, reporting the latest number of people absorbed. It has to be said that the strategy of the savages on the entire peninsula is very easy. It took no effort on Rhaegar's part. Occasionally ride a dragon to scare the disobedient savage tribe, and the rest of the time just wait for the crab claws to arrange manpower. Balon continued to report. You have traveled through the savage tribes that can be integrated in the eastern part of the peninsula. There are noble castles in the western part of the peninsula. We dare not act rashly. It doesn't matter. The nobles of the peninsula must also be loyal to the Iron Throne. Rhaegar was a little casual about this. Conquering the peninsula was not at all as thrilling as imagined. It felt more like playing house to him, a group of ignorant savages, gluttons who didn't even need to spit out dragon flames before they knelt down and begged for mercy. At this moment, the big tent was open from the outside, and a tall figure walked in. Prince, the leader of the White Crow tribe refused to surrender, so I took his head and dedicated it to you. Point one of the first crab claws to surrender. Trangle knelt on the ground, holding a bloody head in his respectful hands. They met with Rhaegar from time to time. Rhaegar did not allow them to call them dragon kings, and they all addressed them as princes. The crab claws were also very happy, thinking that they were closer to Rhaegar than ordinary wildlings, so they called him different. Rhaegar frowned and said in displeasure, "Take it out and burn it. Don't do these bloody things in front of me." If it weren't for the purpose of eradicating the shadow monsters, he wouldn't want to stay with these idiots for a moment. All stupid porcelains, as young as he is, show him these things. Trangle scratched his head and said in a low voice, "Prince, the White Crow tribe has been integrated. There are no other tribes in the east of the peninsula. Take a rest overnight and march to the west of the peninsula tomorrow." Rhaegar had already thought of the route. "Yes, Prince." Trangle beat his chest hard, stood up and left. Balon looked hesitant and reminded, "We don't have much food, we don't have enough prey, and there are too many burdens gathered in the valley. If we continue like this, we will starve. How long can I hold on?" Rhaegar sat up straight. 3 days at most. Balon answered simply. "Well, there are tens of thousands of mouths to eat every day. How did you live before?" Rhaegar sighed. He is only responsible for conquest, and has not learned logistics yet. Balon said helplessly, "Thormund and I were taken in by Uncle Falcon half a year ago. We didn't have enough to eat most of the time. Move to the west of the peninsula as soon as possible and try to deal with the shadow monster as soon as possible." Rhaegar looked sad and asked, "Have shadow monsters appeared before?" "No, the monster seems to know that we are looking for it and is hiding." Balon said seriously. 2 days later, on a deserted mountain path, a long line of savages headed west. A huge black dragon soared in the sky, its broad wings covering a large area of land. After integrating the eastern part of the peninsula, Rhaegar led the savage group to begin the Great Migration. He wasn't stupid enough to take everyone with him. All the old, weak, women and children and half of the savage warriors stayed in the eastern part of the peninsula, relying on hunting to support themselves. The remaining half of the savage warriors took enough food to last 3 days and followed him westward. There are more than 20 crab claw leaders, totaling more than 2,300 people. It is far from enough for a war that is famous on the continent, but on this desolate peninsula, an armed force that goes beyond conventional forces has been formed. Along the way, he met several small noble forces. They have been rooted in a certain valley for generations, holding the title of nobility, but in fact they are just as poor. as the wings of the glutton flew across their quarters, these minor nobles came out of their mansions and pledged their loyalty to the prince. Unfortunately, loyalty is worthless. Rhaegar asked to borrow food. When they heard that it was prepared for the savages, they fell in love faster than turning the page in a book. Even though Rhaegar promised to repay double the amount, he was still very stingy. Finally, thanks to glutton demonstrations, a small amount of food was borrowed. Kill. Beat the lackey of the Bren family to death. Son of a bitch Kleb, kill them all. Flying in the sky, Rhaegar crossed an open space and heard the chaotic sounds of fighting. Glutton, let's go down and take a look. Rhaegar patted the gluttons on the back, and each one lowered the height. Below, a large group of soldiers holding iron weapons were fighting. This group of soldiers did not have decent armor, and most of them wore coarse linen. The weapons in his hands were also very old, far from the style of a regular army. Rhaegar overlooked the melee. The two sides fought very vigorously, charging like they were desperate, soldiers dressed as farmers, holding only hoes and hammers in their hands. Smash the enemies' heads. Rhaegar looked around. I found a flag on each side of the clearing. They are swamp marigolds and dead trees with hanging skulls. On the first day of the new year, the second chapter of the explosive update is delivered. Chapter 78: The Allegiance of the Kleb Family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The fight between the two sides was getting lively and gradually became intense. Under their respective flags, knights commanded the battle. Seeing these two flags, Rhaegar immediately thought of the two largest noble families on the peninsula, the Bren family of Dread Den Castle and the Kleb family of Whispering Castle. These two families are the only two nobles on the peninsula who have established castles. Even if he is also called a semi-savage, he at least maintains his family's face. Especially the Kleb family, there have been king's guards and lord chamberlains in the family, and they have also been prominent for a while. How did these two families get together? Rhaegar was a little confused. They are all so poor. If we don't seize the opportunity to develop wealth, there will be no free war. After thinking for a moment, Rhaegar did not act rashly and continued to watch while riding on the back of the dragon. Once a war breaks out, hatred will spread everywhere and cannot be stopped by a few words. Wait until the fight below is almost done. Rhaegar's further intervention would help convince the half-savage family, who were both at risk. The melee continues. The two sides fought in darkness, with shouts and roars heard endlessly. The fight lasted half an hour. The melee below grew tired. The wildling army led by Rhaegar also arrived from the rear and surrounded the battlefield on all sides. The siege was ordered by Rhaegar. He is trying to command and arrange the war. Although he is still young, it would be better to get to know him more if you have the chance to meet him. Seeing the decline of the battle below, Rhaegar knew it was time to show up. He patted the glutton on the back and signaled it to descend from the clouds. Hiss. The glutton let out a long roar, and its huge body broke through the clouds, covering the battlefield like a black cloud over a city. In an instant, the soldiers in the melee were overturned by a strong wind and became a mess. Without waiting for orders from the commanders of both sides, the gluttons hovered in the sky, spitting out green dragon flames in protest. Dragon. How can there be a dragon on the peninsula? Run. What kind of monster is this? That the moment the giant dragon appeared, the battlefield was completely disrupted. The soldiers stared at the glutton in horror and ran away without their armor. However, the deserters had not run very far when they were blocked back by the savages outside. The savage army, led by the crab claws, tightened the encirclement, screaming and provoking wantonly. The time had come, and Rhaegar rode the glutton down to the clearing. The figure was exposed to the eyes of the commanders on both sides. As soon as they saw someone on the dragon's back with silver gold hair, the heart that nearly jumped out of his chest was relieved. A dragon controlled by a dragon master is fine. The most fearful thing is the uncontrolled wild dragon, which is a giant beast that treats humans based on their mood. Rhaegar sat on the back of the dragon, overlooking the battlefield below, and said loudly, I am Rhaegar Targaryen, the eldest son of King Viserys I. Where is the knight loyal to the Iron Throne? The words fell. The commanders of both sides rushed over, knelt down on one knee, bowed their heads and shouted, I have seen the prince. The Brun family and the Kleb family send you their sincere greetings. Rhaegar glanced at the two commanders and several lieutenants, all dressed as knights in armored robes, and asked. The noble families on the peninsula have always lived alone. Why did you start the war privately? Prince, the Bren family has gone too far and robbed our farmland, that the knightly officers of House Kleb responded indignantly. It's ridiculous. It was clearly your Kleb family who stole our cargo ship from our long voyage beforehand, and you refused to admit it. The commander of the Bren family looked aggrieved and glared at the other party fiercely. Rhaegar sat and watched the two biting each other, frowning. Both sides have their own reasons, and they obviously have long-standing grudges. Rhaegar pondered, who caused the dispute first? It was the Kleb family that stole our cargo ship. There is absolutely nothing on the ship, and 3 of our soldiers died inexplicably. It was clearly framed by your Bren family. As soon as the question came out, the two sides immediately started arguing. As they spoke, they drew out their swords from their waists and approached each other. Rhaegar was stunned and speechless. As expected of a semi-savage family on the peninsula, they have a rough personality and will be beaten to death if they disagree with them. No time to deal with their bad debts. Rhaegar drove the glutton to interrupt their quarrel with a roar, and the scene fell silent for a moment. Rhaegar had a cold face and said dissatisfied, "Call your lords out and pay homage to the king's eldest son, that it would be more convenient to directly summon the person who can make the decision." "Yes, Prince." The two sides did not dare to neglect, glared at each other angrily, and ordered the adjutant to inform the lord to come. I myself gathered the remaining troops and collected the bodies of the fallen soldiers. Rhaegar ordered the wildling army to close the encirclement, consolidate one garrison, and send out scouts to search the wildling tribes in the eastern part of the peninsula. It's approaching noon. Several fast horses rode the lords of the two castles to the battlefield where the smell of blood still lingered. The first thing I saw was a glutton lying on the ground, which was as big as a hill. 7 gods! A Targaryen prince has arrived on the Crabclaw Peninsula. The lord of the Kleiber family is a tall, fat old man with half-white hair and beard. He couldn't help but sigh when he looked at the giant black dragon. The peninsula is too barren and there are few outsiders. A member of the royal family who controls a dragon is rarely seen once in many years. He turned over and dismounted, ignoring the guard's dissuasion, and quickly ran to the dragon. When he saw the sleepy Rhaegar on the dragon's back, his eyes widened in disbelief. To be able to tame such a huge dragon at such a young age, that he knelt down on one knee, raised the sword at his waist to his chest, and shouted with great energy, "Lord of Whispering Castle, Sam Kleber meets the prince." Rhaegar was attracted by his voice, looked down at the old man on the ground, and said doubtfully, "Lord Sam, offering your sword is not the etiquette for a prince." "I know." Sam breathed quickly, looked up at the young prince in the sun, and said respectfully, "You possess the noble blood of a true dragon and come here riding a demonic dragon. On behalf of the Kleb family, I implore you to accept our loyalty and make us your vassals. I am just a prince, not the heir to the Iron Throne." Rhaegar was even more confused. Sam smiled. "My ancestor Clarence Crab was the legendary hero of the Crabclaw Peninsula, and my great-uncle Claremont Crab was the Kingsguard of your great-grandfather King Roy. Today, House Crab has been away from House Targaryen for too long. I don't care if you can inherit the Iron Throne. I only ask that the noble prince accept the loyalty of the Kleb family and let the swamp marigold flag bathe in the glory of the royal family again." Rhaegar, quietly watching the excited Sam Kleb, Rhaegar frowned, not knowing how to answer. To be honest, he looked down upon the half-savage families on the Crabclaw Peninsula. Poverty, brutality, remoteness, this is their true label. Accepting Sam's allegiance will not bring him any substantial help, and will also attract the prying eyes of others. Rhaegar organized some words and declined politely, "Lord Sam, I admire your loyalty to the royal family, but I am not the heir to the Iron Throne and have no right to accept the allegiance of a lord. The new year is here, and sensible authors should learn to update more quickly. Here comes the third update. Just to ask, do you hope that at this stage, the protagonist will participate in politics as the Crown Prince? Or support Rhaenyra's identity to participate in politics? Please leave a comment. Chapter 79 The Land of Shadows. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Prince. After being rejected, Sam wanted to say something more, but was interrupted by the young man beside him. "Old Sam, the prince doesn't like your old bones. Don't embarrass a young prince." This man was dressed in black and was the Lord of Terror Cave Castle. He also knelt on one knee and said loudly, "Wells Brun meets the prince and sends his most sincere blessings." An angry look appeared on Sam's face, he snorted and turned his head disdainfully. "Get up, you two." Rhaegar glanced at Wells, who looked arrogant, and raised his hand to let the two of them stand up. The people in charge were all present, and without much greeting, Rhaegar asked, "I don't want to get involved in the fight between the nobles of the peninsula. I am here for one thing only. I wonder, have you ever heard of or encountered an unnatural shadow monster?" "No, Prince." Wells said bluntly. Sam's face changed slightly and he hesitated. "Prince, I have heard of the monster you mentioned." "Oh, tell me." Rhaegar perked up, but he didn't expect that his casual question would be so fruitful. Sam glanced sideways at Wells and said in a heavy voice, "Half a month ago, a cargo ship encountered a storm in the narrow sea and ran aground on the beach on the peninsula. The patrol soldiers of Chinyu Castle discovered the cargo ship along the coast and asked people to go up and check it. The ship was empty, no sailors in distress, no cargo to be carried. As the soldiers disembarked in despair, a monster hiding in the shadows attacked them, killing 3 people. Wells interrupted again, "Fake, that cargo ship was a trade ship with Terror Cave Castle. It was shipwrecked on the other side of the narrow sea and was looted by you. When you say it, it becomes an empty ship with no money or human resources. Shut your mouth." Rhaegar scolded and warned, "Lord Wells, I didn't ask you, keep quiet." Wells was stunned when he was scolded. He didn't expect that the little prince who looked only a few years old would be so angry. He opened his mouth and lowered his head hesitantly. Rhaegar snorted, looked at Sam, and said, "Continue." Sam shook his head, "This is all I know. What happened next was that the Bren family framed us for looting the cargo ship and sent people to rob farmland in the territory of Whispering Castle." Rhaegar held his forehead. Unexpectedly, "I asked a lot, but very few were useful." Instead, he asked about the cause of the war between the two families. "Fortunately, at least I asked about the origin of the shadow monster." Rhaegar comforted himself. He looked at Wells, who had a bad look on his face, and asked, "You said the cargo ship was doing trade with Terror Cave Castle, but do you know where the cargo ship came from and where it passed?" Wells said in a muffled voice, "The cargo ship set sail from Karth, passing through Slaver's Bay, the Stepstone Islands, and the Free Trade City. Occasionally, it will pass by Crab Bay on its return journey to exchange goods with Seagull Town and Dreadhole Castle." Karth. Rhaegar recalled the world map in the Red Keep. Karth was located in the eastern continent, and the port was between the Summer Sea and the Jade Sea, backed by the Red Wasteland and bordered by the Land of Shadows. Land of Shadows, shadow monsters. Rhaegar naturally became suspicious at the thought of both being connected to the shadows. Sam reminded, "Prince, the Land of Shadows is a strange land shrouded in shadows all year round. There are shadowbinders and blood witches there. It is a place full of fear and chaos. Perhaps, the Land of Shadows is too far away from the continent of Westeros to be traced." Rhaegar thought for a while and said, "Lord Sam, in the western part of the peninsula, the shadow monster is attacking and killing the savages and growing by robbing lives. I came here with the dragon to eradicate it. The Kleb family listens to the prince's instructions. If you need us, we are here to help." Sam raised his hand to his chest, his expression solemn. He still didn't give up the idea of following Rhaegar. Rhaegar nodded and looked at Wells aside. Wells glanced at Sam and the savages camping nearby, with a flash of disdain in his eyes, and turned his head and said, "Prince, you shouldn't listen to old Sam's words. He basically wants to deny the fact of looting the cargo ship and deceive you. So, Lord Wells thinks that the shadow monster I saw with my own eyes is also a fake." Rhaegar narrowed his eyes. "I don't dare. It's just that I think that given your age, Prince, it's better to stay away from savages. They are all a bunch of uncivilized animals." Wells said calmly, "That's enough, Lord Wells." Rhaegar's eyes became serious and he said, "The shadow monster is real. It is eating away at life and strengthening itself. The residents of the peninsula should put aside their prejudices and work together to eradicate it. With all due respect, I have never seen the so-called shadow monster, and I am not willing to work with a group of savages and enemies. Wells frowned and retorted. Young and energetic, Rhaegar sneered, waved his hand and said, "Then you can leave." "Prince, listen to my advice, don't you?" Wells wanted to express his opinion, but Rhaegar interrupted him directly. "Let's go, Lord Wells, go back to your castle, and don't start a war before the shadow monster is solved." Rhaegar drove him away impatiently. The other party despised his age and did not take him seriously. Rhaegar was too lazy to pretend to be a snake with him. Simply drive away, out of sight and out of mind. Wells looked indignant, looked up at Rhaegar, and opened his mouth. Hiss. Sensing the driver's boredom, Gluttony roared, and his smelly saliva splashed all over Wells's body and face. Cough, cough, cough. Ambergrease was splashed into his mouth, and the heat and stench filled his throat. Wells pinched his neck in pain, and the force went straight to his brain. "Take him back." Rhaegar pointed to the commander of the Dreadhole. "I'm sorry, Lord, I didn't mean to." The commander grabbed Wells in his arms and backed away, apologizing. "Take the remaining troops and escape from this open space quickly. Wait for all people in Terror Cave Fort to evacuate." Sam glanced at the sky and extended an invitation to Rhaegar. "Prince, I wonder if you would like to come to Whispering Castle. The Kleb family will do their best to prepare a sumptuous dinner for you." Rhaegar raised his eyebrows. These words spoke to his heart. "During the few days we arrived at Crabclaw Peninsula, we had to sleep and eat in the open air. If he hadn't been overly addicted to conquering and obsessed with shadow monsters, he would have long ago returned to Dragonstone with his dragon." Rhaegar smiled. "Thank you for your generosity, Lord Sam." As soon as the words changed, Rhaegar hesitated and said, "If there is extra food in Whispering Castle, I hope to provide it to the Free People soldiers. When I return to King's Landing, I will repay it double." This. Sam put his hands behind his back and kneaded them, and glanced at the large group of savages outside, feeling extremely reluctant, but at the thought of gaining the prince's friendship, Sam thought he might give it a try. After some hesitation in his mind, Sam nodded and said, "No problem. Whispering Castle will provide the savages with food for 3 days. Any more will be insufficient." Rhaegar brought more than 2,000 people with him, and they were all young and strong enough to eat. The amount of food consumed every day is not a small amount. For a poor family like Kleb with roots in the peninsula, 3 days of food was already a lot of food. "That's enough. Thank you again for your sentiments, sir." Having temporarily solved the food problem, Rhaegar breathed a sigh of relief. The impression of Sam Crab is greatly enhanced. Happy New Year, book friends. The 4th chapter of the explosive update is here. Chapter 80 Terror Cave Castle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day, Rhaegar woke up from a soft goose feather bed, frowned and rubbed his eyes. "Prince, Lord Sam is waiting for you to have breakfast in the living room." Outside the rather ornately decorated stone bedroom, the crisp voice of the maid came. "I see." Rhaegar responded and got up slightly tiredly. He had another dream last night. He dreamed of Rhaegar crying, holding his hand, and telling her she was worried about his situation. "I also dreamed about my father." This was the first time that His Majesty the King, who always had a pleasing smile on his face, was so angry. He punished many people by cutting off their heads and placing them on the beach of Dragonstone as a warning to others. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." Rhaegar muttered to himself and decided to return to Dragonstone Island immediately after dealing with the shadow monsters. Rhaegar pushed open the door, and standing next to him was a half-grown girl wearing a silk gauze skirt. "Miss Yara, you don't need to inform me in person." The maiden was one of Sam's many daughters, and Rhaegar was not yet old enough to bear such kindness. Yara smiled slightly. "I hope you don't mind the responsibilities assigned by my father." "No, you are too polite." Rhaegar smiled back. Sam Crab is indeed a very pleasant person. Last night, a family dinner with a small number of people was specially held for Rhaegar. The food was plenty and there was no noise from the guests. Rhaegar was very satisfied with the food and the accommodation where he rested. The two walked along the stairs to the living room, where Sam was already sitting at the dining table waiting. "Prince." Sam stood up and greeted with a smile. Rhaegar smiled, motioned for him to sit down, and he also sat in the other person's seat. While eating a simple but exquisite meal, Rhaegar asked, "Lord Sam, what do you think of my proposal last night?" Sam paused and said solemnly, "The shadow monster is a threat to the peninsula, and the Kleb family is willing to fight side by side with the prince. It is different from the savages in the western part of the peninsula. The eastern part of the peninsula is controlled by the Brun family and the Kleb family, and the living space for the savages is small. If you want to find the shadow monster and gather the scattered savages, the help of the two families is indispensable." Rhaegar had read a lot of history books and understood the importance of winning over local nobles, let's not mention the fact that the Brent family was driven away by him. The Kleb family is a good choice to work with. Sam obviously won't refuse the prince's request for help, gladly accepted. Breakfast is over. Rhaegar had no idea how to lead his army to kill the shadow monster. Sam had a suggestion for him. The hulk where the shadow monster first appeared is still stranded on the beach. I couldn't get close to it before. Now you are riding a dragon and you can try to search for it. Rhaegar thought for a moment and agreed, "I will do as you say, Lord Sam." The plan is drawn up. 100 fully equipped soldiers were mobilized in Whispering Castle, and Sam personally led the team out. Rhaegar mounted the glutton and soared above them. The savage army has no place to fight for the time being and is stationed in the wild. Chinyu Castle is built near the sea, not far from the beach. After an hour, we arrived at the beach and saw the stranded scrap cargo ship in the distance. Glutton, land. Seeing the hulk, Rhaegar ordered the gluttons to land on the beach. The hulk was baptized by storms, exposed to wind and sun, and was completely destroyed. The bow of the ship was raised high and the mast was half broken. Sam sent 10 soldiers to search the hulk, working in pairs, and shouted immediately when encountering danger. However, 10 soldiers went in and walked around and returned without any trouble. There is nothing inside the ship. Soldiers report. Rhaegar and Sam looked at each other, a little disappointed. Return to Whispering Castle and wait for any news from the savages. Rhaegar gave the order and took the dragon into the air. A simple search will definitely not catch the shadow monster, you have to use bait to fish it out. Whispering Castle, the glutton soars. As soon as he landed, Rhaegar found a messenger riding a white horse being stopped outside the gate of the wall. The messenger kept arguing. The soldiers guarding the gate refused to listen and pushed them away. "Wait, where did you come from as a messenger?" Rhaegar asked curiously. When the messenger saw Rhaegar descending on the dragon, he quickly broke away from the guard and said hurriedly, "Prince, I am the Knight of Terror Cave Castle. Please read the letter." Dread Cave Castle, Bren family. Rhaegar frowned and asked, "What's wrong with Wells?" "I told him that the war on the peninsula is temporarily suspended. Lord Wells is dead." The messenger looked sad and fell to his knees. "What?" Rhaegar was slightly startled, thinking that he heard wrongly. The messenger said sadly, "After leaving you yesterday, Lord Wells returned to the castle and lost his temper. No one dared to come near. This morning the maid went to help the Lord get up. When she opened the door, she found him dead on the bed. What's the remains, but assassination?" Rhaegar smelled danger. There were no external injuries on Lord Wells's body. After examination, the bachelor concluded that the mouth, nose, and ears were punctured with a blunt instrument, damaging the brain. Messengers came one after another. After hearing this, Rhaegar immediately realized that it must be the hand of the shadow monster. "Not on the hulk, but I went to find that idiot Wells." Rhaegar murmured softly. Shadow monsters once only attacked savage tribes, now the savage tribes are integrated and have defenses. It actually attacked and killed a noble lord. This is a very dangerous signal. There is no warning on behalf of the target of his killing. If the shadow monster did not attack Wells last night, but found Rhaegar who was resting in Whispering Castle, a chill ran down Rhaegar's spine, and he didn't dare to think about it anymore. "No, from now on I have to eat and live with gluttons." Rhaegar quickly touched the scales of the glutton to calm down his shock. After feeling confident, Rhaegar took the envelope from the messenger, opened it, and read it carefully. The general story is that Wells was killed, agreed to a truce with the Whispering Keep, and invited Rhaegar to a banquet at the Dreadhole Keep. The final signer was Barbat Brun, Wells' biological brother. Rhaegar took the letter and read it again, exhaled and said, "I have read the letter. You wait here for Lord Sam. I will go first." Wells' death put a lot of pressure on him. he planned to go to Terror Cave Castle to see if he could stop the shadow monster. After that, Rhaegar drove the glutton away, go straight to the other seaside castle opposite the Whispering Castle in the north and south, Terror Cave Castle. The two castles were built on the south coast and the north coast of the eastern part of the Crabclaw Peninsula, separated by a large wilderness. Fortunately, gluttony is very fast, and half an hour is enough. For a round trip soon, Leijia drove the dragon and rushed to the Horror Cave Castle, a gloomy castle built on a mountain. The gluttonous eater circled around the Horror Cave Castle and slowly landed. Hiss! He raised his head and neighed, and sprayed out green dragon flames, announcing the arrival of a Targaryen prince. The soldiers on the city wall were so frightened that their legs weakened and they immediately lost their ability to resist. Rhaegar looked down at the closed gates of the Dread Hole, waiting to be greeted by his master. As expected, the solid wooden door opened from the inside, and a group of well-dressed men and women walked out. The leader was a tall, thin, and handsome young man. There are 7 points of similarity with the Wells I saw yesterday. Behind him, they were a slightly fat woman with red and swollen eye circles, and a rough-looking middle-aged man in armor. Glutton landed in the clearing in front of the castle. As soon as a group of people walked out, they bumped into one person and one dragon. They were all startled by the glutton, who was taller than the city wall. Fortunately, he noticed Rhaegar on the dragon's back. Think of it as a dragon of House Targaryen. They are vassals of House Targaryen. The handsome young man walked out first, saluted and said, "Hello, honored prince, Barbat of the Brun family greets you." Rhaegar looked confused and asked, "Brother, you passed away, that I wish everyone a happy first day of the new year." The 5th chapter of the explosive update is here.